It's like, say what? Seed packet terminology you may need to know, or you may have come across and had a few questions about it. Of course, there's all of this seed packet information that we all, if you're a gardener, and I assume most of you all are, have that interest, you're very familiar with. Of course, the packets will have the name of the seed. It has a picture on the front with the fruit or the flowers. It'll tell you when to plant. It gives you key phrases such as direct sow and sow indoors and start indoors. It also tells you about how to take care of the seed or the plant once it starts growing. It even tells about germination times and that sort of thing. Also, you'll see maturity dates, and then also you'll see down there a lot of times packed for, and you can see this one I clipped this off was 2016. That's not an expiration date. Generally, if you have seeds that are from years gone by and you've kept them dry and possibly in their original packet, depending on what kinds of seeds they are, you could still try to grow them. Now, you may want to add a few more seeds in the planting hole that you start, but generally you can still go ahead and use those seeds. Also on the backs, it just depends on the people, the company that is selling the seeds. You may find some that have notes for the gardener. Of course, the germination rate and viability that tells you, how likely it is that your plants will germinate. Like with this particular seed, the viability is 86%. So if you planted, or will live, if you planted, and the germination rate is about 84%. So if you planted 100 seeds, probably you would have 16 of those seeds that wouldn't germinate. That's essentially what they mean. Also, a lot of times you'll see the scientific name, number of seeds in a packet, but sometimes there's additional information. Okay, sometimes you may see something like cultivar, or as on this tomato seed here, it says gardener's favorite, and it has F1. That is what we call a cultivar, which comes from the term cultivated variety. And a cultivated plant or a cultivated variety of a plant is selected for desired traits. And they usually have to propagate to retain those traits. Well, they always do. And methods could include something like root or stem cuttings, grafting, tissue culture, that sort of thing, or carefully controlled seed production. And we'll go into just a little bit more of that later. Seed-grown cultivars are either a hybrid or an open pollinated variety. So that adding to more. So with a hybrid, you see this tomato celebrity. It's been around for a long while. It is considered a first generation hybrid, which means it's an F1, filial 1. A hybrid occurs when breeders select 2 or more pure lines of 2 plants, and they select those plants because of their traits that they have. It could be disease resistance, uniformity, earliness to harvest, or early germination, high nutrition, color. There's just all kinds of different things that they will select parent plants for. And then they combine those plants by cross-pollinating them. And that is an F1 hybrid. Now, F1 hybrids, has been a lot of information. We've had this knowledge for a while. I don't know if anybody recognizes him. I remember studying this in elementary school, actually. That's Gregor Mendel. And he is the gentleman, he was a biologist back in the 1800s. And he did a lot of did a lot of research in genetics and that sort of thing. Particularly one of his things was the sweet peas. So here it shows that pure lines must be consistently maintained so that the F1 seed can be produced each year. And the process of cross-pollinating is often done by hand. It used to be that, you know, F1 hybrids or hybrid seed that you buy may be a little more expensive. I don't think that's really the way it is now. However, that expense was increased there because, you know, they had to have people do pollinating by hand. So if you saved the seeds or planted seeds from the F1 hybrids and then wanted to harvest that seed, that seed and the plants that were grown from that would be considered the F2 or the second generation. And there's a probability they won't come true, because inside you see we have the first generation. We have, if we crossed a purple and a white, the first generation has all purple, and that's because that purple gene in the sweet peas is dominant. Means you'll always, if you have that gene, a purple against a white, you will get a purple. But once the first generation, they contain the genetics of both parents. So that's why at the second generation, you see, you'll come out with 4 purple sweet peas and 1 white. And that's because of the different genomes or whatever that hook up together to create that plant. And it seems like I remember that you had these little boxes that helped you figure all that out and that sort of thing in school. Okay, well, open pollinated. Plants that have been pollinated naturally, either by cross-pollination or self-pollination. So the cross-pollination methods that we're probably all familiar with are wind and water, or pollinators like the birds, the bees, insects, that sort of thing. Or it could be through self-pollination, which like a plant has both the female and the male parts, and they pollinate themselves. A lot of times I know with like squash or that sort of variety of plant, the cucurbits and that sort of thing, they have female and male parts, and I'll get calls that say, well, it has flowers, but it's not doing anything. Well, that's generally because maybe the male parts or the female part has bloomed, but conditions aren't quite right for that other so that it can pollinate itself. Open pollinated seeds are considered, they're also called true to type or true to seed, and they result when natural pollination of 2 plants of the same variety. Now these are same, and when planted, the open pollinated seeds will have the same characteristics as the parents. And that's a big contrast to the hybrid seeds, which are the result of manually pollinating 2 different varieties to achieve a new variety with hopefully some of the better characteristics of both parents. All right, heirlooms. Now, everyone or a lot of people think, oh, I love heirlooms. I only want to grow heirlooms and that sort of thing. And there's good and bad in that. But I feel like a lot of us, when you say heirlooms, you get that romantic view of, you know, it's been passed down from my granny to, you know, my aunt, and then on to my sister, and then she shared seeds with me, you know. So it's like a big sharing down through the generations, which is true of the past. And still some families do have seeds that they pass down. And even some people have made, you know, a business of it, of passing down these heirloom seeds, and we have catalogs. But nowadays, when it says heirloom on a seed packet, it's probably that the commercial seed company produced the seed for many of those heirlooms. So it wasn't like they actually got it from Miss Virgie and her greasy beans there in 1982 when she passed them down, but probably they were able to get some seeds and then continue to cross-pollinate them, the plants, to obtain the seeds. Now, heirlooms that we see, and you'll see there on the side, the Southern Exchange Exposure Seed Exchange. That's just one catalog that I know of that has a lot of heirlooms and talks about saving seed and that sort of thing. But generally, open pollinated varieties result from natural selection rather than a controlled hybridization process. So what is an heirloom? A lot of times there's a little confusion there. Some consider it to be almost like an antique, 50 years as an arbitrary age marker to define what constitutes an heirloom variety. But also some others classify it as any cultivated variety prior to the 1940s and the 1950s, because I think it was in the 60s, although we had seed companies and they were doing some cross-pollinating and that sort of thing, hybrids as well, as early, 1930s and beyond, but it really didn't become a big booming business maybe until the 1960s. So a lot of people say anything before the 1960s, you can consider an heirloom. But like any other open pollinated variety, seed saved from an heirloom produces the plants with the same characteristics as the parent plant. Okay, sometimes you'll see treated seeds. See my picture here? This is from one of my commercial growers. And generally, that's what treated seed is for. It's more for the commercial producers of vegetables and that sort of thing. And it's coated with fungicide because, sometimes producers want to get it out early, and it could be a fungicide that will help keep the plant, the seed from rotting in the ground when it's cold or wet soils and that sort of thing. But when a seed is treated, and you can see it says caution, treated with Farmore F1 400, and then it gives all of these long names, which are actually the active ingredients in that treatment process that keeps your seed from rotting. It's like a fungicide. So because it is that, you need to read the label, just like with any other pesticide use. Read the label before you start planting and before you start doing anything with that. I know a lot of times the home gardener may come across some treated seeds. Generally, they're in a bulk package, but like at places like the farm stores that sell to the farmers. Current rules for USDA certified organic production prohibit the use of treated seeds. Just a little tidbit there. The next thing you may see is disease resistance. So because of their genetic makeup, resistant varieties are able to withstand some plant pathogens. I think resistant varieties should be used by gardeners for reason number one: it helps you combat diseases in your garden. And that when you are able to do that, it means you have minimal chemical input into your garden. So it's a good practice that way. It's specifically beneficial if a particular disease has appeared in the garden multiple times. And what I show here as a picture is early blight on tomatoes. I know there for a couple of years here, I would have folks calling at a certain time of the year and say, something's wrong with my tomatoes. And I could just about call it before they even said anything that it was probably early blight. And there are some tomato seeds that you can grow that are more resistant to early blight than, say, other tomatoes or heirloom tomatoes and that sort of thing. Also, disease resistance may help if you've got a soil-borne disease. A lot of times here, especially in central Kentucky, a lot of our garden spaces and that sort of thing that we're now growing vegetable gardens in maybe once held tobacco plants and tomato plants and all that. They're all related genetically so that they can get some of the very same diseases that would have affected tobacco plants. Okay. Resistant varies though. Symptoms may develop when conditions are highly favorable for disease. Even though you have a disease-resistant variety, that doesn't mean it's going to cure all disease. It doesn't mean that it's just 100% going to keep your plant from getting that disease, but they have enough immunity, I guess, to help fight it off. It's about like in humans. But resistance rarely means complete immunity from the disease. They do have the ability to suppress disease development. And then with that, you may see on some seed packets or in catalogs, the abbreviations HR, which means high resistant. And that just means what it says, that particular seed or plant is highly resistant to the pathogen infection and development. And then of course there's IR possibly, and that's intermediate resistance, which means it's not as strong as the HR. It has some, but not quite as much. So even sometimes when you use resistant varieties, it doesn't mean that you'll be fungicide free or anything in your disease management program. So you need to still keep an eye, but it does help a lot. Okay, another big one that you're going to see is non-GMO. And this shows on this seed packet, it says open pollinated and untreated. So those are two important things to say, but then it also has that non-GMO project verified. Okay, so GMO free or non-GMO free. So no matter where you are in the big debate over GMOs, whether you believe the researched information that's being put out about it or whether you feel like maybe people are holding something back, the one thing I do know for sure that this non-GMO little picture on your seed packet or even on your transplants that you may buy is really a little misleading. And the reason I say that is because the majority of seeds grown in the US for the home garden do not have a genetically modified counterpart. The big companies are not interested in genetically modifying vegetable seeds or whatever, flower seeds that will be sold to the home gardeners. And really, there are only about 12 genetically engineered crops that have been approved for use in the US. And there's about only 10 of those that are currently produced. And all of those are for commercial crops, like soybeans, cotton, all kinds of different, well, not all kinds, but a few of different things, seeds and things that can be used commercially and used in big production. Also, if you are someone who, say, maybe can buy a GMO, if you're, so let's say for a moment you're a commercial producer, to buy a GMO modified seed or whatever, you actually have to sign an agreement with the company that holds the patent on that GMO seed. And in that, you state that you won't misuse the crop, you won't propagate it, and that sort of thing when you're using those plants or those seeds. So, unless you've signed something, you're not using for your seeds, and you're not using a genetically modified seed. So if there aren't any GMOs available to home gardeners, then why do seed companies put that on their label? It's sort of the same thing as gluten-free in some of our foods. It's marketing. A lot of people think, GMO, bad thing. They don't really know specifically all the information that they need to know about it. They just know that's a bad thing. So if they see something that says non-GMO, then it's like, okay, that's safe. And all of that is really boils down to marketing by the companies. Now, most seed catalogs and websites have charts for each vegetable type that lists relevant diseases and their abbreviations. I did learn that abbreviations aren't standardized across the United States. So like each catalog or each seed company may have a slightly different abbreviation, like VW is for verticillium wilt, but in another catalog, it could be just the V that they put outside the name. So if you're interested, I've made some QR codes here that you can actually scan on your screen. I did try this and it did work, but like from Cornell, they have at this website that you see here, they have a listing of all of the different plants that may have been developed that are disease resistance and that sort of thing. So you can look up the plants or the seeds that way. And then, not that I'm pushing for Johnny Seeds, but it was one of the easier ones just to find and put up here. In Johnny Seeds catalog at their website, they, on the right hand of your screen, they have a website that it'll show you their standard version of what the abbreviations mean for their seed packets and their plants. And other seed companies, or especially the catalogs, will always have a key or an index at the very front of the catalog, or it could be in the back, that tell you what those abbreviations mean if you get turned around. Another thing that you will see on your seed packets a lot of times it's concerning organic production. So you will either see organic symbols like this, or it may say certified organic. This means that the producer of those seeds have been certified by some certifying agency, which could be a nonprofit or a state Department of Agriculture or something, that makes sure that the people that are producing those seeds are going by the requirements that they have asked them for. Not to use herbicides, pesticides, blah blah, whatever they've set as their parameters to consider organic. And you'll see a lot of different ones. Like this one says environmental friendly, no harm to nature, from nature, organic, but they're non-standardized requirements. The one that you can depend on that have certain standards, and the standards and guidelines are across the board for everyone that is able to use this logo, USDA organic. It's USDA certified organic. The producer is certified by the USDA as a follower of the guidelines set forth by the National Organic Program. And they're really pretty stringent on the certifications. And again, like I said, it's standardized nationwide. Okay, another one that you might see some is All-American Selection. And this is by the All-American Selection. You can see the link there below there. But these are flowers and vegetables that have been tested nationally and proven locally. And that little slogan, they've even it has a TM there, so that's their exclusive slogan there to use. But any of the entries are tested for superior garden performance by horticulture professionals across North America. And that's the other thing. All-American Selections will do them according to areas of the United States. You'll have the South, the Northwest, the Southwest, the Northeast, and that sort of thing, and have folks grow those plants and then give their opinions on them. With a standardized type form that they are able to fill out. So, if you see winter, that means that plant probably grew very well, either across the board over the United States, or it could mean that they were a winner of their location, say like the Southeast or something like that. Okay, I thank you. And does anyone have any questions?